Hi, friends. I'm Sean, host of the Stories That Empower podcast. I'm so glad you're here. If you're struggling right now, I want you to know there's hope and light for you. Every week, I interview someone just like you who's overcome a challenge, loss, setback, or trauma. I can't wait to share the nuggets of life wisdom that are embedded in their life stories. Please know this: you are not alone, you are loved. If you've been enjoying this podcast, please consider making a donation to help offset the production cost at storiesthatempower.com. I've got a great guest for you today, so let's get started. Hi, friends. This is Sean from storiesthatempower.com, and I'm here today again with Jean Walters to give you guys another wonderful episode of Unlocking Your Brilliance. Welcome back, Jean. It's awesome to have you here.
Thank you, Sean. I'm really happy to be here with you. I always look forward to these.
Jean, you and I have been doing several of these, and hopefully, we're going to continue to do more. And each time we try to introduce, a new topic that you and I feel that listeners might find helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I've been enjoying your book, Deep Truths, and lots of areas resonate with me. There's one
I'm so glad to hear that. It's always wonderful as a writer and a teacher to hear when things are working, when somebody connects with something. That's just juice for my soul,
It's a great feedback for you, I would assume, as a writer,
Yeah.
as an author.
Yes, as a teacher. I mean, I kind of see myself as a teacher, and I just teach through various mediums, this being one, but also the books and classes. And I've kind of taught my entire life. So because I was a twin, I have been a twin. I'm still a twin. And I was a little bit ahead of my sister generally. And so my mom would always say, Jean, go help Jane with this. And so I was always coming up with different ways that I could present something to her and then find the one that she would get it on, so I would learn that early in life to look at my student and go, are they not getting it? So let's do it this way. Well, let's try it that way. And so that's kind of what I do with these books too, is just present from a lot of different angles, hoping that what I know and understand, I can relay in some way or other to the person who's seeking that information. So that was a long answer.
No, actually, I'm going to take a slight exit with you. And before we go into do a deeper dive in your book, what you just said is so interesting because let's take a slight pause for a second. Let's talk about education and educators. My observation has been this: there are so many wonderful educators and teachers out there, such as yourself. One thing I've noticed is there are people such as yourself who are able to take that knowledge and impart that knowledge by connecting with others, by connecting with their audience. And so how well they can connect, I think that determines, in my eyes, like how effective of an educator they are, because you could know a heck of a lot, but if you're unable to impart that or connect, with your audience, then it's just challenging, then you really don't really have that connection. But it's fascinating to hear that at a young age, you not only were tasked, were tasked to work with your sister, your twin sister, but that you had to figure a way to connect with her in a way that she would understand.
Yes. Well, and I think that taught me early, though, that what I always do is watch my students as I teach, and I can tell when they get it and when they're a little fuzzy with it. And also, another approach that gets closer to, helping them understand the topic. And so I've done this forever, really. And I know that there's a lot of teachers that they just teach from their own self. This is what's interesting to me. This is what I know. I'm teaching it. and they don't really connect with their students. So I've always watched my students carefully to see, when it's making sense to them, or do I need to add something else, or do I need to simplify the topic a little bit more. So, I mean, I think it's just a way of teaching. It's an intuitive way to teach. And I always love it when a teacher can do that when I'm in a class, because of course, you want their knowledge and their information, but sometimes you need to have it tweaked a certain way so that you're really getting it. One of the things I like to do is teach with pictures. So paint a picture, to whoever I'm speaking to, and then they get it through that. Or oftentimes it could be through, what somebody else's experience has been, so they can identify with that. So it's just it's like an art in a way. I would say it's an art.
I would agree. And speaking of teaching, so
Mm-hmm.
now we can segue back to one of your many wonderful books,
Okay.
Deep Deep Truths. And so one word that resonates a lot with me, and I love this word, is the word simplicity.
Mm-hmm. I love that word too.
So let's start at the top. Why did you decide, or why did you choose to write about simplicity in your book?
Well, because I think that it's really important in our world. In our world, that over all these years, we've developed this method of multitasking to the point of craziness. So where our ancestors maybe had a farm and had a couple of crops, and figured out a way to make dinner, and trying to run their life in some very simple manner. We've got the computer going all the time, and then the television, and then all these various multiple ways of living our life. And I think what happens is that we get so busy with all these different mental channels open, that we don't get anywhere. I mean, I feel like if you say to somebody, well, tell me what you learned from that, they look at you with like a deer caught in the spotlight or something. And I think it's important that we can just question ourselves and go, what was today about, and what was the most important thing that happened, and where do I feel I needed to improve? Or just some simple questions like that can help us move through our day and our experience, and feel like we're actually graduating. So I think simplicity is very important. I'm constantly working to simplify my life. And it almost feels to me like I release one thing and then two more pop up. So, but I'm really working to simplify the whole process, because I feel like that way you can give it 100% concentration. And concentration is really important to be able to move forward. Jesus spent that time in the desert. You remember that, where he was plagued with certain insecurities and various challenges. And I think sometimes we just need that time. Now, I meditate every day, so I offer myself that, to just get in touch with who we are. And instead of tasking everything, to just get in touch with who we are, to spend some time with ourselves. And I think we have to make that a real important goal, because we're kind of encouraged to run from one thing to the next. So simplicity, I think, is very, very important if you want to have a clear mind and a clear sense of direction, to know who you are, to know what it is you're all about, and then to be able to perform from that point of view. We'll always be improving, hopefully. I mean, if we really give our sense of self a sense of direction to where what we want to learn and how we want to grow, we'll always get opportunities. But at the same time, we want to be able to utilize them to our highest ability. And I think that when we simplify our life, meaning how much stuff do we really need? How much how much activity do we really need? Um, how many projects do we really need? So that's what I talk about with simplicity, to kind of, one of the people I quote in this book is to look with eagle vision, to look like above and see what, look down and see what you're doing, and see where the glitches are, and where you're wasting a lot of time, and where you just need time to relax, and then take over those tasks, and then become good at that, so that we don't have to be expert at everything. I readily admit I am not a techie person. I mean, everything that I've learned through technology, I've really worked hard to learn it, because my mind does not tend to, I have more of a, a large scope mind, if you will. And so zeroing it down to where I have to get technical is always been a challenge for me. But I know that, I accept that. And so therefore I pull people into my life that can help me with that. What do you think about, does that make sense to you with simplicity, or would you have another version of it?
It does make sense to me. I agree with you. I mean, I also seek simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It's peaceful.
it's peaceful. And what I wanted to ask you about it is, so this is what I'm hearing you say, is that
Okay.
you feel, from your perspective, you feel that seeking simplicity is a good thing.
Yes.
You find it helpful. And if others feel that, it's something they're curious about or something that they find helpful as well, they should continue to pursue it and to seek it. And the other thing I'm hearing you say is that through mindfulness and discipline and making it a practice, a habit
Mhm.
of our lives, that's how we can get it initiated, and that's how we can get it started and maintained. Am
Yes.
I, is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, and I think constantly, in to some degree, being vigilant. How did I get roped into this project that I'm not really, dedicated to, that I don't have good feeling about? Sometimes we get roped into things that just are don't resonate to who we really are. Of course, as I'm saying, all the technical stuff is, I have to be careful with that because I'm in deep water. Um, but I feel like we need to ask ourselves some questions from time to time. I see a lot of that going on with people who are cleaning their houses and getting rid of things they no longer use. And I always applaud that, because when you have a lot of clutter in your house, you have a very cluttered brain. And so that would be an example of the beauty of simplicity, to release a lot of things that are not serving you, but might just be able to serve someone else. So there's a beauty, I think, in just letting go of things and practices and events and so forth that don't really serve, and they're just taking up space and time.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. You're asking me what my thoughts are about it. I think it does require intention.
Mm-hmm.
And I find, there is a little investment of time and energy into it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like the more I do it, the more it becomes a habit. Then
Yes.
it just becomes a habit. I don't really have to
Mhm.
like write it down on a piece of paper, say, okay, between 8 and 9, between eight and
Yeah.
10, I'm going to practice simplicity. It becomes a part of you.
Yeah.
And I think that what are your thoughts about this? I think that letting go can be applied to many areas of our lives, not only tangible physical things, but
Yes.
even relationships with individuals.
Absolutely.
Let's fabricate something. Let's say there's someone in my life, an acquaintance or a friend, and they um kind of going back to a previous episode we did on energy.
Mhm.
Let's say their energy is low, they're vibrating at a very low frequency, and I'm trying to hover up here, or at least that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
do,
Sure.
at a higher frequency. speaking of letting go and simplicity, if I feel that relationship may not be serving me or them, then it might be time to reevaluate and, consider it as a letting go candidate.
Right. Well, people come into your life at a certain point, and they have there's a reason. There's a lesson there, or there's some love to share. There's something going on that you fill a gap and they fill a gap. And so that doesn't mean that it goes on forever. That doesn't necessarily mean that that person is to be our forever, you know, person in your life. So I think we have to really evaluate, and for both of your sake, because if you're having the same conversation today that you had 10 years ago and last year and last month, it might be time to let go, because you might be finished with that conversation. You might be done with it a long time ago. And I think some people go, oh, out of loyalty, but your first loyalty is to yourself and to your growth. And so it doesn't mean you have to be mean. It just, maybe you even have to say, I'm heading down a different road right now, so I'm just not as available as I used to be. You don't have to be gruff about it, but I do think you have to be honest with yourself, mostly with yourself, because we outgrow people. We outgrow people, and maybe they outgrow us too, or maybe our paths are so different that we just don't need to cross them anymore. And I think that's fair and honest and actually loving, to tell you the truth. Because if you're wasting your time, you're wasting theirs too.
That's interesting. Never thought about it that way, but it's true.
Yeah.
Um,
Letting go is a really positive thing, because as we grow, we're going to be letting go of things all our life, not only relationships, but the way we live. We might have gotten into this cultural idea that bigger is better and all that, but that might not even fit who we are. I remember reading about a fella in the movies. I don't know if he was a producer, director, something like that, but he made a lot of money, and he bought this humongous mansion, and it had tons of rooms. And he said he didn't even go into a lot of the rooms. And what he did was he sold the whole thing. He said it just wasn't him. He was doing it because it was the way that Hollywood worked. He sold it and he bought this double wide trailer. And he was so happy because he was living in the whole trailer, and he'd have his production meetings in the trailer. And he just was living a simpler life, and it fit who he was. So I thought that was a cool story. I don't remember his name right now, but it'll probably come to somebody who's listening. And I thought, what a beautiful thing to do. He was in the middle of Hollywood, where bigger and better is like lauded. And he decided it didn't fit him and he's not going to go there. But he was still so productive, and probably even more productive, because he didn't have this big, humongous, home on his shoulders that he had to take care of. I thought that was a great story to illustrate letting go and just being honest with yourself about what serves you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Gene, let me ask you, for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm asking because we're trying to learn from you. As we are letting go of things
Mm-hmm.
and seeking simplicity, like, how do we know we are there? How do you know that, you've made it, or,
Mm-hmm.
you've hit that sweet spot? How do you know that? I mean, for you, yeah, how do you know? Like, is it a feeling, or
Yeah.
how do you know that?
Well, I think it's peace. I think it's peace where you're making space that you can allow yourself to really connect with something deeper and higher than yourself, and you live in a state of peace. If your life is so full with tasks and people and I love people. Don't get me wrong about that, but I think I need me probably more than I need people, because I have to have time where I can sit and contemplate, maybe even write for a while just to myself, and just get connected. And I call it connection time, but it's connecting to my higher self, it's connecting to God, it's just connecting to nature. It's connecting to all the things that bring me energy, that bring me light. And so I have a great need for that. Sometimes I think my need for that is so much greater than everybody else's. But I know that when I have that time, then I have more to give. I give light to others then. And I have a feeling that you feel the same way, that on your walks that you take every day, that you kind of fill up your cup during that time, would you say?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I went on one earlier today.
Yeah.
So, weather's beautiful here, and it definitely fed my soul, and I feel charged to give to others. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head.
And that's something people overlook. They think they're here to, you know, design the building, and all of those things are wonderful. I have nothing against any of them, but I feel like sometimes we overlook that we really need soul time. We can call it that, but we need time to really be with ourselves. One fella came in, as a counselor. I have all these experiences. One fella came in, and I asked him, what is it about being alone that bothers you? And he said, well, and he had to think about it a minute. And he said, well, when I'm alone, I start telling myself what a loser I am. And I'm alone because nobody wants to be with me. And so he made up all this conjecture about all the reasons why it was a bad thing. And then I try to show him another way to contemplate being alone. But the point of it is that what he needed to let go of is a lot of negative programming that he had taken on. And I think this is true of a lot of people. They don't really spend time with themselves because their mind is chattering away all the time. But that's part of this letting go process, I think, is learning when your mind is serving you and when you've just repeated a lot of stuff that somebody else told you or that they believed, and then you use it against yourself. And so many people do that. So part of letting go and part of using energy well and part of being present with yourself is noticing what it is that you've been telling yourself and recognizing when they're lies or when they don't serve you, and then taking hold of that and replacing. So that's a lot of self-work that needs to be done. But in our culture, we were, in general, I mean, we've all been trained with a lot of negative things. If you even watch television, you'll hear it there too. What's the next illness and what drugs do you need to take and so forth and so on. So they've got people scurrying around deciding that they're sick when they could spend that same time and just appreciate their health. And in doing that, they escalate their energy, they escalate their well-being, and then they don't that other stuff doesn't serve them. To hear about the latest illness and to hear about what symptoms pretty soon people are manufacturing symptoms. So I think it's very important for me to spend time alone but not only to be alone with myself, to really move into a higher energy. I meditate every day. So it's very, very important to me to do that. And I'm sort of inviting myself into a higher realm when I do that. And I think that makes the most sense of all, to spend some time every day with that, to give that to yourself as a gift, because it truly is, and it makes everything else go better.
Would you say that our society promotes busyness?
Yes.
Um,
No, I
this
agree with.
continue.
I think that you're right on, and I think that, um, I don't know if our society promotes it, but we hear about this event and that event, and be sure and tune in for this and watch that and be involved in this, and so pretty soon we've got our calendar so loaded, because we don't want to miss anything. But I think it's better to pick and choose and to be fully present in whatever you do. So I think that many times where people can be the victim of all this we have access to everything. We know what's going on down the block and across the street and in the next state and across the ocean. We know everything. I remember watching a newscast of we were moving some ships into Somalia, and then the soldiers were on the beach receiving this new shipment. And I thought, as they were arriving to do whatever soldier thing they were going to be doing, we were watching it. And I thought, that is the craziest thing ever. Can you imagine watching George Washington, you know, uh, unload his ships at the shore? I mean, it's like living in another world. So yeah, we have so many exciting things going on, and we can be participate in them, but pretty soon we're participating in so many things that we've kind of gone a little bit crazy.
I agree. And circling back to the comment you made earlier, Gene, you said how much do we really need? So
Mm-hmm.
I thought of that and I thought of a couple other things you said recently, and I wonder, tell me what your thoughts are about this. And when we're talking about simplicity,
Okay.
do you think that sometimes we might view things through the lens of scarcity versus abundance? Like, for example,
Mm-hmm.
again, let's just pretend me.
Okay.
Let's say I have my days just stacked with commitments and
Mm-hmm.
activities, and I'm the opposite of simplicity. Do you
Mm-hmm.
think it's possible that one reason that I may do that is because, again, I choose to view things through a lens of scarcity and say, oh my gosh, my neighbors just signed up for this. I got to sign up for that. Oh my gosh, my
Yeah.
coworker says she's doing this, so I need to do that too. And it just doesn't end. It just goes on
Yeah.
and on. And
All right.
then I look back and I realize I'm like exhausted. I'm overloaded. I'm exhausted. What are your thoughts about that?
No, I agree with you. And it's like, I don't know if it's scarcity so much, but it's I don't want to miss out. I mean, maybe it's a little both. I don't know, but it's like, well, I was thinking some friends of mine went to Portugal, and I'm going, oh, I haven't been to Portugal. Maybe I should go to Portugal. And I go, stop, stop. Yes, you might go to Portugal, and that'd probably be a cool thing to do, but that's not it right now. Right? No, let it go for now. And I think that you're right, though. I think that has to do with piling money in accounts. Is like, when do you have enough? When do you feel like you're set, that you don't have to worry about it anymore? I mean, saving money's great. I have nothing against it, but I think sometimes you can make it that your purpose, and then when it's your purpose, then that seems to me like it's not the greatest purpose, because you're here for so much more. I think it almost like can get in the way. I was at a conference, and this lady said to me, I don't forget what our subject was, but she said, I am a collector. I said, oh, you're a hoarder, aren't you? And she said, oh, well, and you could tell her whole face changed, and she was, yeah, that was right on. But she said, well, I actually collect things. I went, okay. And I'm thinking, I can imagine what her house looks like, and I can imagine just how suffocating it could be. Can you imagine how suffocating that would be? Like, you can't breathe because there's so much stuff.
I know what you mean. I remember actually when I was a kid, I would from time to time, I don't know if it was every weekend or whatever, I would actually go through my own closet, and whether it was like old books or old toys or whatever, and even back then I would let go of things that no longer served me or brought me joy.
You were unusual.
Yeah, I don't know why I did that. I don't know if I was trying to emulate someone. I think perhaps I think perhaps the reason that I did it was the following, that my I'm generalizing. I think my parents' generation lived through some very difficult times,
Right.
like world wars and stuff. And
Yeah.
so they had a need to preserve.
Hmm.
And so my parents were collectors.
Yeah.
And-
They lived in that fear, of not enough food or not enough anything.
yeah, and it was represented in terms of like furniture or things, you know. So anyways, they were collectors. And
Hmm.
because I was a child and because I could not let go of their things, I think
Uh,
subconsciously I would let go of my things.
that was indicative of the kind of person you turned out to be too, where you realize I don't want, for you it might have been clutter. For them it was, saving things or collecting or whatever you want to call it. And we all have ways of rationalizing, And for me, it's like if I'm not using something, I want someone else to have it. If I'm not using something, it's like, okay, I'm keeping this from somebody else that could put a great use to it. And so I feel like that's one of the ways I motivate myself. I mean, I just don't feel like I want to keep someone else from having something that is of no use to me where they could put a great use to it. So I guess that's another way to look at it. But I just I don't like to have a lot of stuff around. And I don't think I'm a minimalist by any means, but I feel like sometimes we have to develop the mindset so that we can let go. And like you said, let go of people too, that we're spending time with people that aren't enriching us. And one of the gals that came into my metaphysics class, she said, after she was there for a while, she said, I don't have any friends. I said, well, I'm surprised because you have always had so many friends. And she said, I know, but I made a commitment to myself to release all the negative people in my life. And she said, now I don't have any friends. So it was time for her to build up some new friends, clearly. But I thought that was an interesting comment because before that, she didn't even realize that she was around a lot of negative people all the time. And you could really tell it through her own speech because she would be a downer a lot of the time. And she really actually changed herself completely just by, looking at some of these principles that I talk about in the book. Very interesting. She was letting go.
She was letting go. She was
Yeah.
letting go.
Yeah.
Gene, say we've got someone who's listening
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, "Hey, this sounds great and love what Gene is saying about simplicity," but they're overwhelmed, right?
Yeah.
They're looking around their room and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I've got mountains and waves of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know where to start. This is so overwhelming, I can't even start."
Yes.
Um, and I'm just using the room as an
Yeah,
example. It could
sure.
be any area of our lives. So, any advice that you have for
Yeah.
them? How do they start?
Yes. I would be kind to yourself, first of all, but the first start with like a room or a box, and start with 10 minutes, and then look at, let's say you're looking at a room and you see there's so much stuff there and it's overwhelming. So go to one area of that room and for 10 minutes, just look at each thing and say, am I ever going to use this? Can someone else use it? Is it time to let it go? And then, and whatever the answer is, respond to it. So if the answer is, I've completed my time with this thing, I don't need it any longer, it's perfectly good and someone else can use it and I'm ready now to let this go, then put it in a box. I'll keep a box going on. I always have a box where if I'm done with a shirt or I'm finished with an item, I put it in the box. And then when the box is full, I call one of the charities that are picking up things. Um, or if it's a book, you're never going to read that book, and it's really taking up space, and you have to dust it, and somebody else might really love that book, and so maybe it's time to let it go. Now sometimes if people go, well, I might want to read it one day. All this requires honesty because actually any book is available on Amazon or someplace or in the old used bookstore. You can always find it, maybe even online. So when you're holding on to something that you know you can replicate in a minute, and you really haven't used it for 10 years, and you're not going to use it for the next 10, let it go. And but think of it this way, that it's like clearing up an area in your chest. Like every time we let go of something, we create a little more space and it affects our whole physical being as well as our mental being and our spiritual being. So if the letting go is on multi dimensions, so take an area of the room, or take a closet or a drawer. I mean, it's easy to start with a drawer, and then look at that drawer and see what has to be let go of in that drawer, what is no longer usable for you that somebody else might be able to use. And maybe it's trash, and be willing to throw it in the trash bag too. But we start small. That's all I'm saying. Start small, be kind to yourself, but then do it regularly. I mean, at least once a week, you pick an area and just use that one area, like maybe it's a drawer, and just start there. It'll make it so much easier. And then, but the other part of this is psychologically, what are you really holding on to? I mean, I like the idea of asking yourself these questions, because if you're really willing to ask yourself these questions, then you're really opening up space for new and greater and higher and deeper energy to come in, more knowledge, more awareness. And I can't think of anything more important than building your awareness. So that's how we begin to practice it. Start with 10 minutes. And then if at the end of 10 minutes you go, you know what, I think I can do another 10, then do another 10. But take it in little chunks so that it's not overwhelming. Because sometimes people look at the room and they go, I have to get rid of all of this, or no, you just do it in sections, and then you'll get through it fine.
That's great advice. And on that note, I'm actually going to summarize your nuggets of wisdom that
Okay.
you shared with us.
Okay. I
To
love your summaries, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My job is easy. I just write them down. You're the one that's sharing all the wisdom.
Well, I'm sharing it because I have it and I don't want it to sit around in my brain. I want to give it away.
So the nuggets of wisdom that I wrote down for us to get in touch with who we are, to ask ourselves, how much do we really need? To release what's not serving us, to let go, that sometimes we outgrow people,
Mhm.
to make space to allow ourselves to connect with our higher selves, that we need soul time to be fully present in what we do, be kind to ourselves, and to open up space for higher energy to come in. Jean, we want to stay connected with you because we're excited about all your wonderful books, including the one that we referenced today, Deep Truths. So tell us where we can find you online.
Well, definitely go to my website. It's www.spiritualtransformation.com. And then, of course, I do have 2 YouTube channels, and my handle is spiritualtransformation.com. I believe I got to get better at that, Sean. But you could search for me on YouTube, Jean Walters, and you'll see my YouTube channels. So there's lots of ways to get a hold of me. And if you go to my website, you can find my phone numbers and all those things too. So I love connecting with people. It is a passion for me. And I do enjoy this so much, Sean. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this. I appreciate it.
Of course, of course. And I was going to say the same thing. Jean, thanks again for joining me, and the fact that you and I did another joint episode called Unlocking Your Brilliance. So thanks again for being here. And until next time that we meet, I will say bye, Jean.
Okay, bye, Sean.